This is the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm your host, Baruti Carl Alexander. This is the 153rd episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. We started a long time ago in the studio. We've had in-person interviews. We've done it online. And we find different ways to reach out to the community and share powerful knowledge. And we have one of our most powerful shows coming to you right now. We're going to talk about climate change. Out there, some of you may ask, what does that have to do with anything or with me? Well, our esteemed guest will share what that does have to do. It can affect the economy. It can affect your lifestyle. It can affect many, many things. So we're going to go into it and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to share with you all the different aspects of climate change around the world. And we have guests that have traveled and seen different things. I first want to start with Dr.Veon McReynolds, who's a world traveler, and he's seen many things around the world. And this is one of his most passionate subjects, climate change. Brother, introduce yourself, please. Can you hear me, Veon? You're not coming through right now. I'm going to come back to you, Veon.
My bad. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead, Veon.
Yeah, I forgot to take it off of mute anyway. My name is Veon McReynolds, aka Dr. V. Just returned from a 11-country bike tour, boat, plane tour in South America. And just last couple of days ago, saw some really good issues about Peru and them trying to sue internationally for climate change issues. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm sure you're going to get into that when we have our discussion here. Sister Cierra, how you doing? Would you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on tonight. My name is Cierra Evans, and I am the Executive Director of IDK Communications. So passionate about this topic. I've done a lot of work with the NAACP organization in regards to the emergency preparedness for how climate change will affect us. And I'm really excited about the topic today. So thank you for having me.
We're very thankful that you are able to share your time with us. Thank you very much. Brother Keith Strong, Sababu, can you share your introduction and what you would like to say as an introduction, sir?
Yes, thank you for inviting me here today. My background is probably not as extensive as some of your other guests as it relates to the issue of climate. But what I'm trying to do is kind of personalize the conversation for the everyday layman, right? Because we as human species are part of nature, and nature is what's being impacted by not just climate change, but a lot of other dynamics. Just trying to put that aspect on this conversation so that people kind of walk away with some baseline understandings of what's really going on and what can we do, right?
I just want to ask you, Brother Sababu, why should people care about climate change?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of theoretical reasons that we can get into, but the most basic thing that I think most people can relate to is just, some of the phenomena that we've witnessed, particularly this past year. Just a couple examples. I know last year in New Zealand, there was a period of when they had like 70% of their 3-month rainfall covered in a 1-day period. You had heat waves in South Korea and Japan that killed over 100 people in less than a week. You had Arizona, for example, where you had like a month and a half or 45 days or more, I guess, where the temperature there was 110 or higher. One that probably just kind of sticks in my mind outside of what happened in Hawaii was the fires that we saw in Canada last year. They burned an area that was bigger than the state of Georgia. So for those that are not scientists or meteorologists or don't believe in the data or the hype behind what's being pushed out there, you can see it with your own eyes, as we say, right? I mean, just living here in Houston last year was extremely hot. And just this past week, when we had temperatures close to 90 degrees in February. So, the data is helpful in a lot of respects to give people some kind of trend lines, if you will, about what's happening with the rise in temperatures and things along those lines and the economics around it. But just going outside and seeing for yourself, listen to the news and seeing what's happening all around the world. That should be evidence enough that something is happening, something is different about now than it has been the last 50 to 100 years. I mean, we've always had forest fires, floods, and all kind of atmospheric events, but the pace of acceleration now is different. And it's almost getting to a point of where you can't really do much to change the trajectory. The focus now is starting to become, we need to focus on mitigation. How can we lessen the effects of what's already in motion?
Yeah, one thing I know, there is a big push, or had been a big push, with the climate change committee that the United States was a part of. But the comment was made, if all the other countries in the world don't participate, is that a moot point? Comment on that, Sister Cierra. Also, why is climate change important?
Yes, thank you. I definitely agree to the sentiments that Mr. Strong shared in regards to the mitigation component of it. It's so far along where we are already. I think when it comes to the importance of climate change, we need to focus on why it matters. It matters because it affects families. It affects everything in between. And when it affects families, we know that we are the hardest hit. So how do we recover? What are some of the things that are in place to help us mitigate some of the things that we're going to see happen? Because at this point, it's inevitable.
If I can ask, you say it affects families. The layperson may not know how it affects families. How does it affect families? What are we talking about?
I mean, from
Well,
my
when I say,
perspective,
oh yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, you could almost reframe climate change to make it more local, right? And that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like politics. Politics is always local. It's something I was told years and years ago. And when you're talking about climate change, you're also talking about environmental justice, right? You're talking about the pollution of the air and the water in predominantly in communities of people of color, people with meager economic incomes, already stressed to the limits. And now you have to fight the fact that you've got polluted water and air and unfit food to eat. All those things are tied together. Everything is connected. And that's why I was saying early on that, we talk about climate change, or we look at climate change as a global phenomenon, right? Something that's happened to the planet. But we're part of the planet. That's the key distinction that's got to be emphasized, is that it's not something that's far removed from the everyday lives of everyone, every species of life on this planet, not just human, but the plant life, the animal life, every aspect of life on this planet is impacted by some of the things that we're discussing today.
Let me say, yes, climate change is for our nature, the weather. It affects everybody, but what you're talking about is allocation of resources, and that is a political human thing where somebody decides, okay, we're not going to provide the best resources over here for whatever reason because they're not demanding it. So that's still that human element. Talk on that, Dr.Veon.
Yeah, you ask, is it really important? It's a matter of life or death. People around the world are dying from the effects of climate change. And the fires and the snow, basically the droughts where you have food shortages is the most critical thing, food and water shortages. And so these things have been totally linked to climate change, where you have people who can't eat because of the changing climate, because you can't grow, the crops flood out, extreme cold. And what we expect, the scientists have told us that the weather is going to become very unpredictable, and it's going to be big swings, very big swings. And we see that, in all the just every day. But the thing that we have to realize that we can control this is based on the things that we consume. And that one thing is really petroleum products, any product with oil that suction out of the ground that you drive in your car every day. That is the problem, because when it burns, that causes the atmosphere to change. It creates lets the sun be able to give us more energy and more different types of radiation in, because we're putting particles in there, almost like if you think of a window tint in your car and you have this window tint, just think the difference that window tint makes on your skin. Same thing, it's a changing temperature. The same thing, these particles, when they go in the atmosphere, they react just like that window tint to the sun and affects the temperature, wind currents, all those things, which then affect the climate. Real simple. And we can see the change based on the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, with the chemicals associated with producing these changes in our atmosphere and the climate.
So basically, you're saying the way we handle our atmosphere, our oxygen, is affecting us, causing different health problems. Also, we're saying that because of what's
Starvation,
happening
yes.
in nature, it affects food supplies and water supplies. Now, that part is a human thing. Well, all of it has to concern how humans treat other humans.
Life or death.
Because there is enough abundance available to replenish everyone and everything in the earth. But if a group of people hoard theirs over here and not share to the next person, that's where the problem lies. Did you want to comment on that again, Sister Cierra? Hello, Sister Cierra?
No, I definitely think you're spot on when it comes to the resources, and I definitely agree with Dr. Veon in regards to some of the things that we need to make sure that we're being cognizant of. So I think that hitting it spot on with the component of the community and how we need to treat our planet is really going to be an important component in how we move forward in mitigating this climate change situation that we have. So
around the world, everybody is not on the same page. Now, before President Trump, most presidents went along with the climate change program. He took us out of that particular program. I believe we're back in it now, but not every country around the world has the same mindset. And that's why I wanted to bring in other views from other countries. Veon, what have you seen as you on your travels related to climate change? You are on mute again, Veon.
Of course, you have the floods. When I was in Peru, the railway to Machu Picchu was closed off because of landslides. The landslides were caused by abundant rain that, was above normal. So we can see these things, occurring all around the world. But particularly in Peru, they have taken a stance that, because they have some, the high in the Andes, they have glaciers. And so these glaciers, when they, get warm, that's what we talk about in Antarctica and some of the coldest places, these glaciers breaking away. And this town happens to be right high in the Andes with a big lake near the glacier. So when the glacier falls in the lake, it floods the whole village because it's down in the valley. So they're suing a German coal company for uh, really protection to help them try to mitigate the problem, to stop the water from, flooding them out, and also to stop polluting the earth and causing the change in the climate. So that's what, Peru, and they have their case has actually been accepted by the German government based on almost something like that government. That's what you were saying earlier. All the governments are not on board, but Germany, they have something in their government as if to do no harm. You must not do any harm to anyone else. And so that's part of their government laws. And so Peru is suing that the large coal company is actually harming the people in that area by the amount of CO2 that they're putting in the air. And they calculated that they're only putting in like about 0.5%, 1%, but they were able, the Peruvian people were, with the help of some environmental groups, and that's where we all have to stick together. They were able to file suit and get it accepted into the court. So they're under way now.
Now, I will say, of course, in this country, one of the big things is we are petroleum based. Now, we do have some movement to electric and different things like that, but we're still petroleum based. And here in Houston, we got all these plants, industrial plants that put the things in the air. And that, I think, was the core of why this movement came about, because it was polluting the atmosphere and, causing cancer and different things. Veon, have you seen or heard from that perspective, people trying to clean their air?
Well, a lot of people, they even have air clinics now. Particularly, I know that, we see in China that the time that when COVID took place, people were actually able to come outside because they changed their behavior. They weren't out in their cars. The factories were reduced and they weren't polluting. And so that's what we have to do, is change our behavior. We can't continue to live this consumerism lifestyle and consuming all the plastic. Everything we have is plastic. Now we have plastic inside our bodies. So we have to change our behavior. If we don't change our behavior, we can talk about, well, it's doing this, it's doing that. We have to change
You're
our
gonna get
basic
booed
behavior.
and tarred and feathered for saying something like that. Just with the pandemic, just to put a mask on, people went crazy. Brother Keystrong Sababu, what do you think about, is it a possibility that people will be interested in changing their behavior to help us have a cleaner atmosphere?
Well, I think it goes back to something very, very important that the brother just talked about. All of these issues that we're discussing, whether it's climate change or environmental justice or social unrest, whatever the issue of the day is, it's created by humans. So the solution has got to come from us. So it's going to require a change of consciousness as much as anything else. The technology to address, to mitigate some of the effects of climate change or this climate crisis, the technology is already there. We've had numerous agreements. The Paris Agreement you referenced a moment ago. We've always got these contracts or these agreements in place, right? There's leadership out there in the world that want to do something about this, but you got an environment where there's not a lot of trust between different countries, especially when you come to technology, right? Because everybody's trying to one up each other from a military standpoint. So they're not willing to share some of the technology know-how that they have that could address climate change and potentially weaponize it for something else. So you got the issue of trust, you got the issue of competition, and you got the aspect of economics, right? Not just in terms of how it's going to affect us as people live on the planet, but from the business and political realm of this conversation. That's something that is, we got to grapple with. And the politicians, the leaders that we have, whether it's Donald Trump or Biden or whoever it happens to be, the onus is really on all of us individually. It's not on any one person in any office on any part of the globe. It's got to be a change of consciousness, which leads to a change in behavior that's going to change the trajectory of what's going on.
Well, we are starting to get into electric vehicles and more solar energy. It may be a long process, but if the earth holds, we will probably get there. And the comment I have on that is the earth, despite what we do, we are not going to do anything to be able to damage the earth in an irreparable manner. Now, we might damage our ability to live on the earth, but the earth itself, created by a creator, will replenish itself, and whatever we do, we're not going to be able to destroy the earth. That's my opinion. Do you agree with that, Sister Cierra? Do you
I
have
definitely.
any comments on the discussion that the brothers shared?
Oh yes, that was definitely great insight. The onus is actually on us. So I definitely agree with that, because we have to indeed do the change in order to take advantage of the preventative side of things. So if we don't change and have that awareness, we won't ever get to the preventative side. So that's one of the things when it comes to us culturally, I would like for us to get to that place. How can we adopt preventative measures in order to mitigate some of the disastrous things that are going to be opposing us? So that's one of the biggest things that I agree with.
Do you have any ideas on that? And you work for the EPA, you said?
No, sir. No, I work with IDK Communications, but I have done work with the NAACP as a part of the Next Gen Leadership Program. So one of the reports that we did in collaboration with Columbia University was a report on emergency preparedness called Turning the Tide. So that is why the focus for me is truly about informing the community, because they're thriving on our ignorance. And I think that is very important for us to be able to adopt this consciousness, because all of the policies, all of the rules, all of the lack of access, it truly sits in the space of us not knowing. And that's where they thrive. It is similar to politics. If people don't know what's going on, they can't make the connection, the relevance of why it's connecting to them in their lives. So we have to gain more information, and we have to become a steward of just learning. we have to be eager to learn, because it's truly in our best interest. And to speak to what Dr. Veon said, it's a matter of life and death. So.
Yes, ma'am. Just recently, we had the phone system go down. Now, I'm not sure why. It really hasn't been explained. But just think if the water, something happened and the water was shut down. And we do have communities, of course, everybody knows about Flint and Detroit, but I believe here in Texas, there was a community that had a bad water issue. Maybe you all know about that, but
Corpus Christi.
They're all over.
The possibility of different things coming in and affecting our communities and that we take for granted. We take these things for granted, and they could cause a real big disruption in our lifestyle and our daily lives and so forth. And as you say, we really don't pay attention, and we harbor an ignorance on that, but that is kind of, pushed on us, and it's not required of us. We are so content. I remember when I went over into Africa, And one of the big things was I had never, used the restroom outside in a hole cut in the ground.
Oh,
And then the lights, there were no lights. When the
right,
sun
right,
went down,
right,
you
right.
had to find some shelter and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
forth.
yeah,
So
yeah. Good,
those
good.
were
Great,
things
great.
that I saw on other parts of the world, and not everybody has the same amenities that we have here. But I still go back to that is a people thing, and people are the ones that because going back to the old Chief Seattle thing, he said, who said that this was your portion of the land? This is God's land and everybody can share. And when you say, who are you to say that you this is your land and only yours and so forth? So, but that is the community of the world that we live in, where everybody wants to get their piece of the pie. Dr. Veon, what do you say about the water possibilities, the phone possibilities, the things that might hit our community?
Well, I think, you really hit, I was going to want to tell people what type of lifestyle should you be living? The type of lifestyle that you were talking about when you visited Africa, the type of lifestyle that I saw most of the people living, from Mexico on down, as I say, to Peru, Brazil, a lot of the country, especially the poor people. And then generally, a lot of the people, you speak of water, a lot of the people, south of the border don't have running water. What they have is a big tank, and, that's how they get their water. So they're very dependent upon, water being transported and they're hoping, what you hope, if you got to transport water, you hope that the source remains good and drinkable. And in many cases, the sources are getting polluted. And so, the thing, it comes right back down to it. We have to change our lifestyle down to a very, very simple lifestyle. Really, if you look at it, we need to change our lifestyle like it was pre-industrial age when this stuff started to happen. We can see the change, and the more we want to hold on to that, the worse we're going to be. We cannot continue to live this consumerism. I want to have all the lights. I want to have cars. I want to do this. I want to do that. All these wants. The planet cannot satisfy our wants. It will definitely take care of our needs if we'll just, try to get the needs taken care of first, or else we're going to all die. Some say to say it like we're all going to die. And
I
then
say
let me
again,
say this one other thing.
Veon, you
Just
are
let me say this
asking
one thing.
to be tarred and feathered by that type of conversation. I know where you're coming from, but you are asking to be tarred and feathered
Well,
around
okay.
the wrong people in conversation.
Yeah, well.
Let me add,
Brother Sababu, Key Strong,
yeah,
the
let
water
me add something real
shortage
quick.
and the different things happening. Can we survive? Can we live that way? What would happen if we tried to do that?
Well, again, there's so many things that threaten humanity right now. Climate, change is obviously, probably the biggest, but for a lot of people, that's even, 10, maybe 20 years down the road where we hit, if we don't get, I'm saying that's what scientists are saying, right? We got to reduce carbon emissions by half by 2030. We got to be net zero by 2050. People think that's a long ways away, but it's not, because it's not like,
What are you
okay,
saying? If we don't do that, we're gonna be in real trouble?
we're we're,
Already in real
we're
trouble.
already in trouble. But what I was going to comment on is this: when I talk about changing the consciousness, something I learned decades ago from being part of the shrine was that we basically function in society, not just United States, but we'll say United States. We basically function as individuals. The only time that we tend to come together around any issue is when we face a common threat. Go back 3 years ago, 4 years ago, with the pandemic. I don't care what your religious background, your political affiliation was, up to a point, race, culture, whatever. Pandemic was global. and it affected every community. And because it affected every community, leadership and the people were putting pressure on politicians and business leaders and everybody else to find the answer, find a solution. So this whole thing about climate change, it has the potential to destroy humanity, but it also has the underlying capability of bringing humanity together. Because if we don't come together, the opposite is going to happen, which is we're going to destroy ourselves. So we gotta start having these conversations with everybody. You know, I hate to say it, but in the United States, when things happen to Black and brown people, people of color, you know, a lot of people don't pay attention to that issue. When it happens to whites in the society, then there's a fire alarm fire that takes place. So we got to start having these conversations with each other, right? As if our lives depend upon it. I don't care if you're Klansman, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't give a crap what your background, what your beliefs are. As my brother said here, it affects everybody. Nobody's going to go unscathed if we don't address this problem. And so we got to raise the consciousness, raise the awareness, you know, start have these conversations on a day-to-day basis in our families, in our synagogues, in our churches, everywhere we go, to kind of raise this issue up and make people aware, hey, this is real. This is real.
I gotta say this though. We are in agreement that it is an issue, but of course it's not a popular on the mind issue for most people. And there are a lot of climate change deniers that it's not going to be a problem, that 20 years from now, nothing is going to happen. There are a lot of those. And you know, so, and just like with the pandemic, there were people that said, hey, it's not going to affect me. I don't want to wear a mask. I don't care. I want my freedom. And so we're always going to have those deniers, those people. So it's not going to be a issue that everybody can agree on. But we are getting a little bit better. We are using more electric cars. More people are using solar panels, and discussions like this help, and different ways we can reach the community to just bring the issue up. But as you know, it's probably about 7th on the list, behind finances, immigration, so many other things. So we just have to keep talking about it and bringing it up. But I think you said, Veon, that now China is more conscious of it. You know, in China, they don't use as many cars, if I'm correct or not. A lot of people use bicycles. They don't use as many cars. And that's one way that they try to keep it down. But not, especially here in America, people would have difficulty with that. But the biggest thing I think about climate change is how it affects the economy, how it affects people's lifestyle. And what you're saying about if there's a drought, that it affects the ability to produce food, and it affects the water. Like in Africa, they don't have a water system, a plumbing system. What those ladies do is go to that river out there, and they get a bucket, and they put that bucket on their head, and they do that 3 times a day. And with one of those buckets, they wash their clothes. With one of them, they use for drinking water. And with one of them, they may use to bathe with. So that's when I was there in 2012. So from that perspective, climate change and how things, because if the water freezes over, it disrupts their whole life. And if they're not able to access that water, it's polluted or something of that nature, that affects their whole life. So from that aspect, climate change is one of the biggest issues that are out there. Not as people don't see it as much here in the United States, and that's why it's not on our consciousness as much.
Oh, yes.
You got something to comment on that, Sister Cierra?
Go ahead, Mr. Strong. I saw you had something burning in you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, like I talk about politics. Politics is always local, and you talk about something that you can see, you can touch in terms of how climate change is affecting people's wallets. Look at how much you pay for homeowners insurance, how much you pay for flood insurance. You got some states like Florida that don't even offer. I mean, where the major insurance companies have pulled out. You can't even buy a house in Florida, parts of Florida. Now, you can't get them insured because they've had so many hurricanes and floods. I can see the same thing happening to Texas and the whole entire coastline of the United States. People are pulling away from living on the coastlines because of flooding. So you ask about, well, why is my insurance going up so much? Healthcare is going up. These are pocketbook issues that people struggle with every day, trying to make a decision between eating and paying bills. Climate change affects us every single day. It's just not tied to that event, if you will, but it's very real. It's very much a pocketbook issue. And that's, like I said, that's just one of many examples. The other thing is the social service net that we have here in the United States is being dramatically reduced. When you have these national disasters that happen across the United States, and you got to call in, I'm trying to
FEMA,
think of
FEMA.
FEMA, Homeland Security, all these governmental agencies. They don't have an endless supply of money and resources to respond to these disasters. So who's going to be on the hook for paying for that? You and I, people of color, for the most part. That goes back to what the sister was saying in her role with the NAACP. This is a real issue that affects everyday people, everyday lives. You have to just connect the dots. That's the key.
Yes, brother. I understand. And I certainly understand them. And here in Texas, we've had Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane this and Hurricane that. And certainly it's affected our pocketbooks. And you know, how many people lost a car during Hurricane Harvey? I know I did. So it certainly affects us in so many ways. And as you said, we can't depend upon FEMA or somebody else to reimburse us every time. Veon, how do you say, and would you say is the best way that you would like people to live to be able to adjust to the climate change that's out there?
As simple as possible. We have to, one, we're going to have to change our economic system to a certain degree that because we can't continue to say the oil industry employs all these people, all the things that are associated with producing products that are tied to killing the planet. That stuff has to stop. And so the type of lifestyle, as I say, is
Can you
one.
share some of those products that are affecting us in that way?
The first product, I would say is petroleum. Again, if you know that just the petroleum products are all over our environment. They're everywhere, everywhere you look. We're with our phones, we're holding a petroleum product. We're probably sitting on a petroleum product. The petroleum is in our clothes. It's all over. And so this stuff is wearing off, it's leaching out. We have the concept now of microplastics, which, we know these things. We get these different types of chemicals in our body. We got more cancers, that sort. So the way to stop this is to change the things that we come in contact, quit producing them. We got to get out of our cars. We got to get, more bicycles. We got to change. We got to not need to go to work that produces these highly polluting products. You look at a train, every time you see a train, you should be seeing a carload of death rolling down. It's full of chemicals that will eventually wind up in the water supply. It has to go there by one way or another. So we're going to drink it or eat it. And we're eating and drinking all this petroleum stuff. We need to shut down, unfortunately, the petroleum and associated industries.
I just want to share, my brother is one of the great cyclists of the United States, certainly over 60 cyclists one of the best ever of all time, Dr. Veon, and he speaks from his reality, uses the bicycle, doesn't use the car. So I just want to give a shout out to Dr. Veon McReynolds in that context. Powerful brother. Climate change is an issue, but until, the former Vice President Al Gore, he had, a push and people paid attention to it, but we don't have an Al Gore out there pushing things of that nature now. And there's so many other things on people's mind, just surviving. Gas is almost $3 here in Houston, everywhere. Just having enough finances. Cars have gone up extremely high, and electric cars are even higher than that. And as Brother Sababu said, the insurance. And I mean, to have a car, your insurance is at least $400, I believe. So everything is getting so expensive. And if climate change is affecting us, it's a prominent, important thing that we got to deal with, because we got to find some way to reduce these prices so we can survive. And if that is a big part of it, and everybody's sharing that it is, we have to do something to help that come down as far as living, and find some other way to survive better. This is the 153rd episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. I'm Baruti Carl Alexander. I just want to share, one of our sponsors is A Rocket Moving and Storage. If you have moving needs, talk to A Rocket Moving and Storage. It's a Black-owned moving and storage company here in Houston, Texas. And if you go on my website, sourceseeker.net, you can see a link for that particular company, and I always want to give them a shout out. We've had a very powerful conversation. We are toward the end of our show, but I'd like to give everybody a full and clear opportunity to share what needs to be done in the realm of climate change, and how people can help, and how they can help themselves. Brother Sababu, how about you start on that?
I think the solution, like the doctor talked about, is obviously the solution, of utopia, if you will. I think from a more practical standpoint, understanding the forces of economics and politics that we're dealing with here, that the one thing that we can do in a very simple way that would help tremendously, right? We already have this attitude of this culture of sharing, right? Sharing space, right? Ride sharing. If you talk about Uber, working from home, sharing technology that's in the cloud someplace, right? A lot of the living spaces right now, where you've got these apartment buildings across Houston where they're kind of all encompassing. You've got gyms, you've got dry cleaners, you've got grocery stores, all in this small confined area. So we're developing a society where sharing of resources is becoming more germane, if you will. And if we can kind of push that just a little bit more to get people to start carpooling and sharing resources, so we're not using up so much of the resources, the natural resources of the land, I think that's a good start. Ultimately, we want to move in a direction where we're reducing the amount of petroleum-based products that we're producing and consuming. But something that we can do today, is look at ways to where you can start carpooling and sharing resources, right? Just like we did back in the 70s when we had the oil embargo, and the president of the country told us, hey, we need to tighten our belts, we need to change our habits, our lifestyles, and so forth, because the price of gas was almost $5 a gallon at the time. That's kind of what we're looking at. So there are some things we can do in our everyday lives. You go to the grocery store, you shop at Kroger's, HEB, whatever. Talk to the grocer about stop using plastic bags. get rid of the plastic bags in the stores. Everybody should be carrying cloth bags when you go grocery shopping. That would be a tremendous help. So there's a lot of things that we can do on an individual basis in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our homes to start making this effort, start changing the mindset, start making people become more conscious of trying to save the planet so we can get to that end game of reducing our dependency on fossil fuels.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. I wrote those down, and I'm gonna share those. Sister Cierra, same thing. What can we do to help? What can people do in the community that will help in the expression of helping climate change?
There's many things that we can do. I personally would say, obviously, to agree with everyone else, is behavioral change. There's a particular buy-in that we have to have, and we need to be very, very intentional about building coalitions that will help advance equity, specifically when it comes to the infrastructure policies for the emergency preparedness of it all, because there's a lot of conversation about having a seat at the table. But if we're not a part of the blueprint when it's written, the plan is already in place. So we're going to be years behind. And I think that's where we're lacking. We have to make sure that we are at the conversational piece of when they are writing the blueprint. So we have to build coalitions. I've heard for years, it takes a village, but the village has to work. The village has to continuously learn. The village has to have that buy-in, and they have to bring the information back to the collective that is not able to, or that's most vulnerable and not able to adopt some of these principles that we already know to be fact. So building coalitions is obviously going to be one, staying informed at the local level, knowing who your representatives are for some of these committees when it comes to emergency preparedness, climate change, and environmental concerns.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to share if somebody wants to talk to you and ask you questions? Would you like to share any kind of contact information?
I would love to. So again, my name is Cierra Evans with IDK Communications. One of the things we focus on is building that communications gap between generations. So that's a part of this piece that we have to focus on when we're building the village. My contact information is CIERRA@idkcommunications.com.
IDK Communications.
Yes, website is www.
Would you like to share? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
Website is www.idkcommunicationsllc.com.
Okay. IDK Communications LLC.com.
That's right.
Okay. All right. I got that. Brother Keith Strong, Sababu, would you like to share any contact information so someone may want to ask you a question?
Yes, I'm the president and founder of an IT spend management firm. I've been in the telecommunications and IT space for over 30 years. The name of my business is called VCOM Partners. Website address is vcom-partners.com. And I'm also a yoga practitioner, which is where I kind of give my perspectives on this conversation.
Thank you, brother. Our last and powerful comment, everybody's a powerful comment, but the passionate Dr.Veon, please share your final word on climate change.
Well, you talked about the passion. You made me think of when I was in Europe, and during that time they were having a demonstration based on extinction of species throughout the planet. So not only is this a human problem, but it's a all life forms on the planet problem.
That's a
And
very important point.
they stopped the city of London from moving. I actually slept in the middle of Trafalgar Square, in the middle of the street. So we can upset the system if we, we band together and do that. We have to form these coalitions, and the United States is the place to make it change. And if we stay, way we move, the companies are all here. We set the consumer trends for the whole world. So if we make the push here in the United States to change our living, to not be consuming more than any other country, all you have to do is just go on YouTube and look at simple living, how people live in most of the other countries around the world, except European countries. But if you look at people of color, the way they live around the world, they live much more in harmony with nature and the type of lifestyle that will sustain us. The type of lifestyle that we're currently living, we can see. That's why we're having this conversation. It is not sustainable. So grow you a garden, use less, uh, think about being natural. Look at how your great grandparents lived. They lived, families were happy and everything intact. They were a lot healthier people. We didn't have all this mental illness. They were best breastfed. They wasn't consuming plastic, that sort of stuff from the cradle, to the grave. So we have to again change our lifestyle back to basically the way it was the pre-industrial revolution. And we all can do this. We can do this because they're doing it in other parts of the world, but we are the ones that are driving this lifestyle of consumer, burning more gas. We want the biggest car, the best this, the more, while you look at people around the world who have less clean water. Oh, let me make this one point that we talk about clean energy. There's basically no such thing as really clean energy. You have to have, if you talk about solar, well, where does those solar panels come from? It takes minerals, and the type of minerals the people in the Congo right now are suffering from the production of the solar panels, the chemicals or minerals needed for the solar panels, and the batteries, the lithium batteries that we're using. So these people are dying, suffering the dust and stuff, cancers. So it's a worldwide problem. And you just say the people, but the animals within that area are suffering. The animals are getting burned up in these thousands. Look at it. Think about all the thousands of animals that get killed when you have a fire that, is thousands of miles or hundreds of miles square, So we have to think about,
And I know
tomorrow.
if we mess with the animals, we messing up the ecosystem, and that comes back to our survival ourselves. So we mess with the animals, and they have a hard time living. It affects our life too. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Veon. I'm sorry.
yeah, that's all right. And what we see when you see these animals dying, in the coal mine, they used to have the canary. And so when the air got bad, the canary would fall over and they were, oh, something must be wrong. And so as we see, species dying off, as we see the polar ice caps, melting, falling into the sea, we see crops burning, we see the floods, all this stuff, we can see it. But the problem is that the media is not pushing it. We need to get the media to push it. We need to talk about it more. The more we talk about it, like this show, for instance, this is putting it out there, and it's not being talked about enough. This is the number one priority for human beings on the planet. All this other stuff is associated, but it has to be from the point of reducing our impact on the climate.
Amen.
Okay, yes, brother, I understand. And this show and shows like it have to be a resource to allow people to hear different views and important things. And that's what I've tried to do. This is our 153rd episode of the Sourceseeker Hour. Our next episode, we're going to talk about health and Black beauty. Then the show after that, we're going to talk about immigration. So we talk about a myriad of issues, and we're going to keep talking about it. Again, we're going to bring up climate change from different perspectives and share with our audience. I'm Bruce Carl
Immigration.
Alexander. This is our 153rd episode. Dr. Veon, would you like to share how people can contact you?
Oh, it's real simple. VEONMC@gmail.
Yes, sir. Peace and power. Everybody, we thank you. Anybody have a final word that they want to share?
I just want to say I really appreciate the brother's perspectives. I mean, I'm just like, I'm fired up and ready to go.
Well, thank you, bro. Thank you. Thank everybody for your comments and sharing with the audience. We appreciate. We'll see you next time on the Sourceseeker Hour. Thank you.
Good night.